Hi everyone, and welcome to the Emotional Intelligence Pawdcast. I'm your host, Sandra Thompson, founder of EI Evolution, and I am super excited to take you on this incredible journey. We're going to be exploring the transformative world of emotional intelligence and empathy, guided by some truly remarkable humans and their fantastic four-legged friends. In each episode, we'll dive into inspiring and heartwarming stories about our beloved canine companions. We'll discover the unique and magical bonds we share with our dogs and uncover the profound lessons they teach us about understanding and managing our emotions. From tales of loyalty and love to moments of learning and growth, our furry friends have so much to offer when it comes to enhancing our emotional intelligence. We'll also discuss practical tips and insights on how to cultivate empathy and emotional awareness in our daily lives, inspired by the natural wisdom of our dogs. So sit back and relax, maybe even with your playful pup by your side, and join us for an enriching experience that celebrates the incredible ways dogs help us connect more deeply with ourselves and others. Welcome to the Emotional Intelligence Pawdcast. I am so excited for this recording. I met Helen years ago when I worked for a significant charity in the UK, and I reached out to someone she works with a while ago on another project, and then all of a sudden we were back in touch. And so I'm over the moon to be inviting Helen and Bonnie to you all, and the amazing stories that Helen has got on her journey in working with Bonnie to be the happiest dog. So Helen, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Sandra. Yeah, lovely to be here with you.
Thank you, and thank you again for organising this time. I know you're really busy, and I can see as well we've got Bonnie the dog taking some treats. So those of you that are watching on YouTube, you get to see Bonnie the dog.
There she is.
Oh, beautiful. Look at that. Like, what's going on, Mum? We don't normally get treats at this time of the day. What on earth?
Yeah, she's very suspicious because she's had her walk this morning and she's had her food. So that normally means that's it now until lunchtime when she gets like a natural treat like a chicken neck or a rabbit ear
Ooh.
or something. So she is a
Ooh.
bit suspicious of treats at this time, but she's performing well, and she's not normally very food orientated. So that she's doing good girl, aren't you?
Yeah, fantastic. So Helen, let's dive in to you and what you're all about, what you do before we talk about Bonnie the dog.
Okay. So I work as an account director for a small direct marketing agency, and we only work with smaller charities because it's just what we love to do.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the smaller charities just need some help. Yeah, just getting their act together with support for their fundraising activity and their communications. So we offer sort of a full service agency in that, and it's absolutely great. We've got some wonderful clients, and it really exposes us to, the really hard work that goes into running a very small charity who need all the support and help they got. They haven't got the big budget for the resources that some of the bigger ones have got. So
Sure.
it's a really lovely thing to be able to do.
So I remember back in the day, yourself and David, quite an incredible, powerful team who kind of intuitively knew what we needed. And I do recall your kind of gentle encouragement and nudging for me and my crew. Like, would you like to consider doing it this way? Which really, when you kind of strip it back, was a bit like, no, don't do it. Don't do it that way. Do it this way. But I do remember the relationship being really strong and feeling really supported. So certainly that I would call emotional intelligence and empathy without a shadow of a doubt. So
It's absolutely about that. We never sort of push anybody into doing anything they don't want to do, or they can't afford to do, more
mm,
importantly.
mm,
And we are big on added value. So we consider ourselves part of the team of the people that we work with,
yeah,
and feel that, honesty and, like you say, emotional intelligence is at the core of everything we do, really. Those are our if you say, our KPIs or our USPs, all the usual jargon.
yeah.
But yeah, it's just, that extending that care of the charities into what we do for them as well.
No, I understand that, and I certainly remember that. So I think this is a classic case of emotions create memories, and when I think of you and and the team that you worked with, what comes up is a rush of, I think, like, love and care and support and consideration and
Oh,
all of
that's
those
nice.
things. Well, yeah,
That's
that's it. So thank you again for describing what you're up to. Let's now talk about Bonnie the dog. What
yeah.
breed is Bonnie the dog? Where did she come from?
So it's sort of a bit of a long story, isn't it, Bon? So my relationship with dogs is sort of gone back to, as a child. We always had dogs growing up. And then as you sort of leave home and you start your career and what have you, dogs just don't have a place in that because you can't give them the time. And quite rightly, I think, you shouldn't really take on a dog if you haven't got the time for them and space for them.
Yeah,
But I had about, what we're talking, 14 years ago, I had a 3-month sabbatical from work
yeah.
because that was what I was entitled to do. We went off
Hmm.
traveling around the States for 5 weeks. When I came back, I thought, I just want to do some voluntary work, and through my love of animals and dogs in particular, I took up a role as a volunteer dog walker at the Bristol Animal Rescue Centre.
Okay,
So I started off doing that probably 3 or 4 days a week. And then when I went back to work, I didn't work Fridays. So I would go Friday and Saturday mornings to do that. And I kind of started to realise that the staff had a great trust in me walking what I call some more of the special needs dogs,
okay.
and some of the bigger, more difficult to handle dogs.
Hmm.
And they trusted me with that, which was great.
Yeah.
And I then thought, right, well, I want to do more. I want to learn more about what goes on behind the scenes. So
Hmm.
on my Friday mornings, my day off, I'd get up and get into the dog's home at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I was a volunteer animal care assistant,
Okay.
which basically helped preparing all the feeds, cleaning the kennels, helping with some of the training work, and then at the end of the morning, walking some of these special needs dogs.
Okay.
And that just opened my eyes to the amazing work that goes on
Yeah.
in these rescue centres, and the love and the care and the patience that these
Mm,
staff have for these
mm,
animals that come in that are very damaged, very broken,
mm.
and in some cases quite dangerous.
Yeah.
Um, and it just was amazing. And talking about emotional intelligence, these dogs were coming in
Mm,
having gone through some of the most horrid experiences because of humans.
yeah.
And after a little bit of love and attention and patience and just giving them some space,
Yeah.
they began to trust again, and
Okay.
they began to realize that not all humans are bad,
Mm,
and that actually, having a bit of love in your life can make a world of difference.
yeah.
Um, so it was just amazing to see the transformation of some of the dogs, and from some of the ones that I started walking that were, they were using me as a bridge between like staff only dogs to being able to go out being walked by other volunteers, and then
Okay.
obviously eventually rehoming. I mean, the ultimate objective is to rehome these dogs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that then spurred me to find out even more and just understand what happens to the dogs in that process. What is it about the behavior of the dog that gets them to trust that
Mm,
way?
mm.
So I did an online diploma in canine behavior. It took me a couple of years, and I had a fantastic sort of online mentor, and I passed that with an extinction. I'm
Of
very pleased
course.
to say, of course. And I guess, really, in a way, I would have loved to have gone into that kind of career.
Mm,
But at the time, obviously financially, that wasn't necessarily the right thing to me. But it
yeah.
just really opened my eyes into how dogs behave. And actually, it's just the same as us humans. and if you treat an animal in the same way as you treat a human, you get so much more back from them.
Wow.
So then Bonnie came into the rescue centre. She had been found tied to a tree in a wood somewhere, very thin, barking, just on a nasty piece of rope. Just somebody had tied her to a tree and left her. And she came into the rescue centre. She was very anxious, very scared, very underweight, very malnourished.
Yeah.
And then she had a phantom pregnancy as well.
Okay.
So we're not quite sure what the circumstances of it were, but I started to get to know her, and built in her rehabilitation, started to play with her in the outdoor play arena and walk her.
Yeah.
And at that stage, me and my partner were in a position to start thinking about having a dog. And I convinced him that would be a really good thing for us.
Bravo.
And got him to come in with me one day and walk her, and he fell in love with her straight away. Of course he did.
Wow,
Of
right.
course he did.
Cool.
And so we adopted her. And it's been a work in progress. It's still a work in progress, even after 8 years.
Yeah.
She's still quite nervous of new people. We're very wary of taking her into situations where there are people around her, moving around a lot. So we've got one of those yellow dog, anxious dog things that go on her lead, just to say to people,
Okay.
look, she needs a bit of space.
Yeah.
Don't come up to her and go, oh, hello, hello, hello.
Yeah, that's good.
With us and family and friends, she's absolutely fine. She's the most cuddly, loving dog now, aren't you, baby? You love your cuddles now. But yeah, and there are still certain things that she's scared of. But again, through my understanding from the course I did of what I needed to do to just reassure her and get her over those fears, treats help. Positive reinforcement of everything. Never telling her off.
Okay.
Just giving her the space, not punishing her for anything she did wrong. Not that she's really ever done anything wrong. She's never been destructive or anything. But yeah, when she does something good, saying, good girl, you can get a treat for that.
She's being ever so good now. So
She is.
started volunteering at this centre. They
Yeah.
obviously saw something in you, in that you had, the strength to take on, because some of those types of dogs are quite determined, and they're strong, they're quite heavy, some of them.
Yeah, I tended to start walking the bigger dogs that came in. If I'm honest, they were the ones that had probably been owned by the wrong types of people, and they came in more damaged.
Right.
There were a couple of Rottweilers that I walked, and they were basically scared of their own shadow.
Right.
It was really sad to see such beautiful big dogs, such gentle dogs by nature.
That's it.
There was one in particular which is I think it's a case study on their website now. Came in, and even the staff couldn't get anywhere near him when he came in. Very reactive, very scared, very fear aggressive.
Okay.
And it took them a good 8 months to be able to just, bring him round. And now he's been rehomed. Happy ending. Beautiful dog, Kevin.
Kevin, the Rottweiler.
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic. So
Yeah.
there's a message in here about not giving up, and the hope that the dog will, when they're ready, take that decision to trust again. I mean, that is massive, isn't it? To make that decision to trust again, to open yourself up, to be vulnerable enough to, and to allow these new humans to I'm blown away by that, because 8 months is a long time to be
It
in a
is.
centre, right?
Yeah, and that's a testament to the staff there. And, that's the same for staff in rescue centres of all kinds across the country, the love and patience that they give to these animals to give them the best possible hope of being rehomed, and it working in most cases. And then, like you say, the trust of the animals.
So tell us a little bit more about this course that you went on. You said it was a couple of years. It was, I think you said it was
Mm,
online. It was a diploma,
yeah.
and of course you got a distinction. What kind of things do you learn on that course? Because the language that you're using, it's a clear demonstration that you're informed with the language of that kind of sector. What kind of
Mm.
things what kind of modules do you cover?
I think it was about 10 modules in all, so it's quite long. It started with just the history of dogs,
Mm-hmm.
understanding where dogs come from, going right the way back to, just being wild, pack animals, wolves, and then how breeds have been developed
Okay.
and how humans actually have been responsible for most of the breed development for our needs.
Mm-hmm.
So whether we need them as companion animals, working animals, farm animals,
Yeah.
so the breeds have all been. It's hard to imagine that something like a Pekingese has probably come from a wolf.
Yeah.
Um, but over the years, that's how it has evolved,
Yeah.
and all dog breeds have come from wild dogs, and obviously crossbreeding and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, obviously, breeds are introduced for their specific traits. So things like cockapoos now, which are hugely popular,
Yeah.
are because cocker spaniels are really active and energetic, but
Mm-hmm.
poodles are also one of the most intelligent types of dogs. They
Mm.
are probably up in the top three for intelligence. So you get the best of both worlds with it. So that was the first module. And then it went through physiological modules, so understanding the body and how things like the olfactory glands work, the sense of smell, and
Wow.
how that empowers the brain and how that informs animals. So it was quite scientific on that side.
Love it.
And then it was just about body language,
Mm-hmm.
understanding a dog's body language, what that means. And quite often people think that if a dog is got this sort of smile on their face, they're happy. It's not. Quite often a smile
Mm.
can mean anxious or insecurity, and they're not sure about the situation.
Yeah.
The different types of tail wags, all sorts of things, panting and what that means. So it was quite, and then obviously it's then went on about how our interactions with dogs affects them
Yes.
and
Yeah.
how our emotions affect them and
Mm.
how we need to behave around them as well.
Sure.
So that, and you look at case studies of how different people affected their relationship with the dogs because of the way they were.
Okay.
So that was really interesting.
Mm.
And I guess that then comes into the whole sort of dog training aspect
Mm.
as well, of
Absolutely.
just, if you've got a dog like Bonnie who is anxious around certain things,
Mm.
you can't be anxious around them as well. You can't tense the lead, because that just translates down into her.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a whole range of things, really, really interesting.
Yeah,
But I
absolutely.
learned a lot about humans as well as dogs.
Do you want to share a couple of classics there, Helen?
Um, Again, as I was going through the course, it was about how you would interact with people
Mm-hmm.
as well as an animal. And I
Mm-hmm.
still say to some people now, when I meet them and they allow their dogs to come bounding up to Bonnie if she's on a lead, and it makes her really anxious.
Mm.
And I sometimes say, I said, well, hang on a second, then she might just sort of have a little snap and they might go, oh, you're your dog, your dog. I said, well, hang on a second.
Yeah.
You don't know me.
Mm.
If I came running up to you in your face saying, hello, 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 hello,
Yeah.
how would you feel?
That's it.
Especially if you'd had a bad experience in your life.
Mm.
And they think, oh, yeah, actually. Okay. So I think it's just appreciating that, they're the same as us. We don't want that.
Mm.
Um, so it's just, understanding that. And if you shout at them, and I think when I spoke to you before, it was that I see so many people whose dogs don't come back when they call.
Yeah.
And then when they come back, they shout at them or give them a smack.
I know. Yeah. What?
Why would a dog come back to you if that's what he's going to get when it comes back? So,
Exactly. I'm going to make sure I
yeah,
do go back to my mum and my dad, because I'm definitely going to get in trouble and I'm definitely going to be shouted at. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I remember speaking to a dog behaviourist at Battersea, and she described this for the first
Mm.
time. And it is so blindly obvious, isn't it? When you play it
Yeah,
out like that, why would they do
yeah,
it? So why didn't
yeah.
you kind of reward them when they come back? They might just do it more often.
Yeah, exactly. And I see it, you see, and again, people telling their children off. I'm thinking, why are you telling them off? They're doing what children do.
Mm,
Just, it's this classic sort of, ignore bad behavior, reward good behavior.
yeah,
And okay,
yeah,
there's a limit to that. There
lots
is a
of,
limit. You have to
yeah,
set boundaries and you have to have some kind of soft discipline
yeah,
and soft rules.
yeah.
But yeah.
So does this mean then, with this qualification that you have, do you find yourself in a position where friends are asking you for advice with their dogs?
Yeah. Yeah, I have had a few like that, and obviously
Right.
I'm always very careful because I'm in by doing an online course in dog behavior means I'm not an expert,
Of
and
course.
I hold my hat to any professional behaviorists who do
Mm,
actually work wonders. I mean, we've got a dog sitter who's a behaviorist as well. So I am not saying that, but I am by any means
yeah.
in their league, but
Mm,
I just have maybe a bit more of an understanding. So yes, I have had a couple of friends that sort of, my dog's doing this. Why is she doing that? Or
yeah.
what do you think I can do? To help her. Or if I'm at a friend's house and I'm saying, they're saying, oh, she likes that, and I'm saying, no, I don't think she does like that. Actually, maybe you should just leave her alone.
There's I'm gonna say something controversial. So, you drive a car, you've got to do a theory test, you've got to pass
Mm,
the test by an instructor.
mm,
There isn't a manual for children, so you have children and there's no manual for it. You don't have to pass the test. But I do wonder if it would be better for society if people decide to take
mm,
on particular breeds or maybe rescue, where they have to
yeah.
do a bit of a test just so that they have the awareness, they're informed, so
Mm,
they can see some of the things that you can see from how you've been educated. There's a
yeah.
real there's a real gap there, I think, which is causing some of the problems with dog behavior, which is causing
Yeah.
them sometimes to have to be put down because the owners have not treated them the right way or misinterpreted their behavior, and it's caused the animal to be under huge amounts of stress unnecessarily. I mean, what do you say to that, Helen?
Yeah, I agree totally. I mean, it's really hard to enforce. I mean, obviously, even if they reintroduce the dog license, I don't think that would necessarily overcome it. I mean,
Mm,
microchipping is law now, but
yeah.
that's not really being upheld in the way it should be.
Mm,
And from being at the rescue centre, there are dogs that come in with microchip, and you
yeah.
contact the owners, and they say, "Oh no, we gave the dog to somebody else. We're not the owners of that dog anymore." And
Wow.
that it's really frustrating. I think, like you say, is the word, because I think during the pandemic, everybody, it was well noted that dog ownership rose,
Mm,
so hugely,
yeah.
but there wasn't a lot of thought about,
That's it.
well, either the breed that they're getting, it may be, that one's cute and fluffy, but
Yeah.
actually, does it fit into my family life? Will it be good with children? Is it easy to train?
Mm,
Can it be left on its own?
yeah.
And all of those things. Then when life resumes normality, they're
Mm,
suddenly hit with all these issues.
that's it.
The dog becomes anxious, the dog becomes stressed, the dog bites.
Mm,
We know where that ends.
yeah.
And the rescue centres, really, in the last 18 months, have been full to the rafters. And
Yeah.
even now, the waiting list for people wanting to hand over their dogs, are there because
Yeah.
people just don't know what to do with their
Mm,
dogs.
mm,
And, the number of strays
yeah.
have risen. I'm not going to get into the XL bully
No.
argument
Yeah.
because that is a whole other matter. But the rise of those being abandoned,
Mm,
I think it's increased 230% of XL
yeah.
bullies being either mistreated or abandoned.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's frustrating. Like you say, if there was some kind of test, I don't know how that would even start to be enforced.
Let's
I
start
mean,
it here.
obviously,
Let's start it here, Helen.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to a rescue centre, again, this is a great example, reason to adopt, don't shop. Because if you go to a rescue centre, you go through that process of
Mm,
them doing some checks on you, making sure you've got the right home environment,
yeah.
making sure you've got the right family composition, if you're in the right location for your dog. So
Hmm.
those checks are in place for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely adopt, don't shop. That's what I would say.
Adopt, don't shop. Yeah, I've heard that a few times now in the recordings that I've done, and I'm definitely fully supportive of that for sure. So let's take a moment then to think about emotional intelligence and
Mm,
empathy and the kind of traits or the behaviours that Bonnie has
mm,
shown in her time with you. What kind of
yeah.
things come to mind? What kind of things have you observed, Helen?
Well, again, I think it's just initially it's just that trust in us. So
Mm,
we gave her the space when she first came into our home, and it did take us a while before we could cuddle her properly, get her on the sofa, curled up next to us. But again, it was just through her understanding that we weren't going to hurt her,
sure.
that we were giving her that space,
Hmm.
and she developed. I mean, she's got some collie in her, which I think gives her a bit of a head start in terms of
Okay.
intelligence.
Yeah.
She's very much a dog of routine.
Hmm.
I'm sure she can tell the time because if we haven't done like if we haven't given her food by a certain time even at night, it gets to about 11:15. She looks as she's at the bottom of the stairs saying, "Come on, it's time to go to bed." What are we doing? What's your telly? Let's get up the stairs to bed. And then, sort of 7:15 in the evening, she sat in front of me saying, "Come on, we're going to go for our evening walk now."
Yeah.
So she's very intelligent in that way. But more recently, I've really known it. I noticed it because I lost my mum in April, and my other half has more recently lost his mum as well, which
Mm.
obviously meant that we were visually upset
Yes.
and distressed at times and
Yeah.
anxious at times. And I
Mm.
really saw her picking up on those emotions.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started to get upset and cry, she would
Mm.
either want to come and comfort me, so she would
Yeah.
nudge me, or she would just skulk away thinking, "Oh, I've done something wrong."
Yeah.
And then actually made me stop crying because
Yeah.
it was having such an effect on her.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's so perceptive in things like that. And any sort of tension in the home or whatever, she will just take
Mhm.
herself off because
Yeah.
she doesn't like being around those sort of circumstances.
Mm.
Yeah, and well, we've got a few friends that have come into the house that aren't necessarily dog people.
Yeah.
And again, you can see she behaves differently around those
Okay.
people.
Yeah.
So she will sort of keep herself away, and if they try to make friends, then that's when she kind of thinks, "No, you don't really like me, so I'm not going to force it on you if you're not going to force it on me."
Okay. Right.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah, so those are the most obvious things, I think.
Mm. I mean, it is incredible, isn't it? Because I remember Prince, the dog that lived with us when I lived in London before I went off to uni, and his
Mm,
tail would go down. It's kind of the tail kind of goes inward a bit,
yeah,
doesn't it? And they walk off a bit kind of
yeah,
nervously when they see something happening or they hear something or they sense something that has nothing to do with them, but they do default to, oh, I must be
yeah,
in trouble. What's happened here? And obviously going to reassure the dog to know that, it wasn't them and it was fine. It takes them a little while to warm up again. But they are so hugely susceptible to how we are. And, humans are so susceptible to how other humans are. We really need to
yeah,
be thinking about dogs as the case study, as the visual representation of the impact of emotional contagion, because a human might not display it, but it's all going on in the brain.
mm,
We need to be probably far more cognizant of that.
yeah, definitely. I do think like you say, people bounce off of other people, and if they
Mm,
if they are in either a very negative environment, then
yeah.
that can impact on them. And it's exactly the same with animals.
Mm,
They will
mm,
just feed off of them, and that's where you see dogs being with the wrong people, or the wrong
mm,
types of dog being with the wrong people, and they take on the behavior of those people, and that's when they get into trouble, and then it puts specific breeds into trouble. So it is very much that they will take on our personalities.
Yeah. And interestingly, when I was thinking about doing this podcast, someone sent me a clip from 101 Dalmatians where there's a little scene, isn't there, where the dog's going along and then the owner is going along with it. And I think there are 4 or 5 humans with their dogs. And the way that it's been drawn is that they're identical in some sort of way. You can see the connection and the behavior and how they show up. So I think I'm going to try and bring that to life a bit in podcasts to come. So to close up then, Helen, what does it mean to have a dog? What does it mean for society? What does it mean for you?
Ooh, I'm going to try not to get emotional, really. It is just like an emotional crutch for me, to be honest. I guess it's, everybody's different, and I understand that not everybody's an animal person. I've always been an animal lover. My home's not a home if it hasn't got an animal in it. I've had cats when I have not had time for a dog. Been brought up having dogs. It just completes my family. I haven't got children, which maybe is another reason. So I wouldn't say I treat her like a child, because again, that's wrong. But yeah, it just completes my little family and my home. And we don't go on holidays abroad because she gets separation anxiety. We can't put her into kennels, so we have holidays with her. She comes everywhere with us in our camper van, and it just, I don't know, it just gives you that other dimension, and it gives you that other thing to consider. That again, it's about really emotional intelligence, and it makes me a better person, I think, from having her to consider.
Thank you for sharing that. When you started explaining, I could feel my eyes starting to fill up too. If it's medical intelligence,
It's get me going.
It's kind of indescribable thing, isn't it? Because I grew up with dogs, and they say as well, I'm not sure if this is true, but they say that children that grow up with dogs can sometimes be more compassionate, can sometimes be less selfish and more considerate of others. I'm going to ask some behaviourists what their view is on that, because there might be something in it. I don't know, but thank you so much for coming on here, Helen. I really appreciate it. And it's been
a
to have
pleasure.
a sneaky
You saw Bonnie's snout,
Bonnie's snout, taking all those treats. We might have started a new routine now, so watch out for it tomorrow at this time.
Oh, well.
Great to see you, Helen, and lovely.
Oh, and you, Sandra.
Take care of yourself.
Yeah, you too.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in. If we've not connected already, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on there most days. You'll find me under CXEI Sandra. And also, if you want to find out a bit more about my work, then you can pop along to my website, www.eievolution.com. One final thing, and in the spirit of customer experience and feedback, I wonder if you might consider leaving a review on Spotify. I'll leave that one with you. So until the next time, be well and be pawsome. Ta-ra!